Progress toward a peace agreement in the Ukraine-Russia war is gaining momentum tonight.
But as KTLA's Samantha Cortese reports, there are still significant hurdles to overcome.
Hi there. President Trump said he wants the war to end and the killing to stop. He says Russia and Ukraine have each agreed to different terms of a peace deal.
It's not easy, but I don't know. I think we're going to get there.
While at the annual White House turkey pardoning ahead of Thanksgiving, President Trump said Ukraine and Russia are on the verge of a peace deal brokered by the United States.
In the last month, 25,000 soldiers have died. So I think we're getting very close to a deal. We'll find out.
This morning, Russia launched a wave of attacks on Ukraine's capital, Kyiv. And while the war continues, so do negotiations. President Trump confirmed Special Envoy Steve Witkoff will meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. And at the same time, Secretary of the Army Dan Driscoll will be meeting with the Ukrainians.
We are ready to move forward together.
The U.S. initially proposed a 28-point plan, which required Ukraine to hand over some territory and reduce its army. It also required Europe to agree Ukraine will never be admitted to NATO. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said talks in Geneva over the weekend led to new terms, but did not disclose details.
I'm ready to meet with President Trump, and there are sensitive points to discuss. We have them still, and we think that the presence of European leaders could be helpful.
And on Truth Social, the president essentially denied that request and said he wouldn't meet with President Zelensky or Putin until the stages of the plan are final. In the newsroom, Samantha Cortese, KTLA 5 News.
With more on the unfolding quest for peace, we are joined by retired Marine Intelligence Officer Hal Kempfer. Hal, good to see you as always. So as we just heard in Sam's reporting, Steve Witkoff off to meet with Putin, Dan Driscoll with the Ukrainians. But President Trump won't sit down with either side until a deal is hammered out. As he says, final. How close do you think we are to that?
Well, it's tough to tell right now, Micah, because they had 28 plans. The last thing we heard out of Geneva was they're down to 19 parts of this overall plan or proposal. But there's still some big areas, that territorial control, that's a big part of it. Obviously, Ukrainians do not want to give up any control of the Donetsk Oblast. It sounds like the limit on troops has dropped out. I don't know what that's going to look like. A lot of discussion about NATO membership. So, there are some big gaps, even though they do seem to be coming closer together.
Right. So, details that still need to be worked out, obviously. But after nearly 4 years of fighting, Hal, and over 1 million casualties, with the terms that you've heard so far, what do you make of them at this point?
Well, Cher, I think there's going to be a lot of discussion. I think a lot of it really depends on what comes out over this week. Can they get somewhere closer? Right now, the Russians, basically, they have one word for reply of anything, which is "niet." They just don't seem to agree with it. They want these maximalist goals to be met, and they don't seem to be backing off. But the other side, too, and this is something that Putin realizes, is he's got huge socioeconomic pressures that we don't often see in the West as clearly as he sees them there. And so he knows the clock is ticking very loudly in his ears. He's either got to somehow win, which he can't do militarily, or to get the best deal he possibly can.
Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Iran, Venezuela, China. The president has faced criticism for focusing more on foreign relations than domestic issues such as affordability. I think he tried to get out in front of that one a bit with his Oval Office meeting with Zoran Mamdani, the New York City mayor-elect. But as we come to the end of the year, how would you categorize the state of the world? Are we more or less safe than we were at the start of the year? And how would you grade the president's first-year performance on the world stage?
Well, Micah, it's been a very busy first year of performance. He's worked very hard on a number of wars. Some of the things he claims, he got peace in a war, I would say it was actually more of a skirmish or a conflict that was either averted or it was quickly quelled before it became something bigger. But he has been big on the international stage, which is interesting because his focus really going into this year seemed to be much more domestically focused, with one exception being tariffs. So he's been busy. Now, the tariffs has put a lot of stress on the international system, put a lot of stress on our alliances across the board. But as some leaders in Europe have said a couple of years ago, it's a 1938 year. That was 2 years ago. Now, you take it or 1940. 1940 was a very interesting year. Let's just say there's a lot of stuff going on, and I'm not seeing any slowdown.
So the FBI, Hal, is seeking to interview Democratic lawmakers who urged U.S. troops in a video to defy any unlawful orders. One of those lawmakers, Senator Mark Kelly, a retired naval officer, he's being investigated by the Pentagon and could be recalled to active duty for court-martial proceedings. As a retired Marine intelligence officer, what's your reaction to this whole saga?
Well, Cher, I got to tell you, it really brings a lot of focus on, of course, retired officers and the ability to be recalled back to active duty. It would be very unusual to see something like this. Usually you only see something like this if they did something when they were on active duty, that they'd ever be recalled back. This is something he did after he clearly retired. He's a sitting United States senator. It's unusual. Now, technically, what they said is you're not supposed to obey unlawful orders, or you're supposed to obey only lawful orders. That's in the Uniform Code of Military Justice. That's in the Geneva Conventions. That is established international law. The question, and this is what they're looking at, were they trying to encourage military members to disobey lawful orders? And of course, the other problem is for junior officers, junior enlisted, they don't often have the experience or knowledge to really understand some of the stuff, and it could cause them to disobey lawful orders and get them into a lot of trouble.
Good point. Retired Marine Intelligence Officer Hal Kempfer, good of you to be with us. Have a happy Thanksgiving, my friend.
All right, you too, Micah. You too, Cher.
All right. Happy Thanksgiving, Hal.